Greetings everyone and welcome to the BlastCast. I am Jarvis, who as always is the guy who thinks I talk way too fast when I try new shows, Lightning Dragon.
Well, it's true.
It is, yeah. It was worth a shot. It was something new, but I think I need to just slow it down a little bit. I was trying to go for the Cinema Sins vibe, and I think I just made just sins in general. Alright, as a quick update to that short little video, I was actually contacted by a Spectrum moderator today, and this time I wasn't in trouble, which is weird. He had said he had seen the video, and he wanted to let me know that the moderators are actually having this problem too on some threads. They get locked out, and they have to log out because they can never get back into that thread again. So actually this is a universal problem, and there's nothing that can be done about it, it appears, until they either update Spectrum again. They're kind of screwed too. Yeah, so I guess if you find out you're in a thread and the moderators can't get into it, go wild. But anyway, I do appreciate him letting me know that. So it is not a shadow ban. I'm glad I didn't hardcore say it was, because I wasn't exactly sure. But thank you for that clarification. Before we get into the do I want DCS in space, let's go over a couple questions real quick in Calling All Devs that we kind of wanted to break down. Now, one of the things they had mentioned was that the distance between Hurston and Olsar, the question was, it was 32 million kilometers, and our current quantum fuel tanks can't handle that. So how were they going to handle that, with truck stops or whatnot? And they said it was to be like 8 truck stops between those two locations.
There's an obvious fix to this that doesn't require placing a bunch of assets all over the place. Is give ships more fuel, maybe, especially the larger ones. Like fighters, I completely understand. Fighters shouldn't have the same range as other things. That's why they're carrier-based fighters. Now, if you have a ground-based fighter, like the one we don't speak of anymore, I mean, that one, it's technically a fighter, but, you know, it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of odd to basically not just give more and then whittle your way back and then fill in what you need. Also, and there is an upside to this. Having all those stations means there'll be more places for players to spread out and maybe do some trading in different locations. So we'll have to see how it develops. I would generally think the easiest way would be to do too much fuel and then kind of whittle it down.
Either way, it's probably going to resolve itself, but this is one I pointed out. I thought it was kind of a strange choice. I mean, you need to test the truck stops, obviously, but it's like, well, I mean, the fighters are going to be testing them all the time because they can't fly for very long.
The other question was how long until they get a fix for ESP, or if it's currently a priority, and I can't even read that without almost chuckling. Every patch since ESP has come out, it's been nothing but threads saying it doesn't work right, because ESP is a mechanic that you find in first-person shooters on consoles. It's something that basically helps you get onto target, because when you build the game around an FPS mechanic, you end up with FPS fixes. This is, if you would just make a flight mechanic, like DCS doesn't need ESP. Evocron Legacy has kind of has a bullet bending instead of like a small little tiny gimbling, if you will, like where it micro adjusts. You have all sorts of other space games, but I've never played a game that's flight proper that says, let me take control of your ship and pull you on the target. It is definitely an FPS mechanic, and when will it be fixed? When they officially call it an FPS. And they just get rid of the ships and give us power suits. I don't know, but
remove sticks from the flight options. No, you can only play with mouse and keyboard or gamepad.
Yeah, it's a mechanic that doesn't belong in flight. So when is it going to be fixed?
Probably never.
I think it's something they're going to have to get rid of eventually and just change their pacing. It's not a flight mechanic.
And that's pretty much all the questions we had that we wanted to cover.
Now that my 30 days of DCS, well, they're not over, but the 30 days that I said I was going to do to get the answer, we're going to answer the question of, do I want DCS in space? And we broke this down into categories, and we're going to kind of give it a point system by the end of it to determine which way I'm leaning.
A leaderboard point system.
No. No.
But everything needs leaderboards.
Especially pre-alpha games. Well, to break this down, the first thing I think we need to do is start with on the ground, starting your vehicle. Now, DCS can have a remarkably complex startup mechanic. This is true. For the Flaming Cliffs planes, it's more of along the lines, it takes like 3 different button presses to get everything up and running. Turn on your electricity, turn on your left engine, turn on your right engine, and you're ready to roll.
There used to be a start all engines, but that doesn't seem to be working right now.
Yeah. Well, even for the full sim planes where you'd have to flip to every switch and whatnot, if you hold the left Windows key and press home, it does a cheat start, which basically does it automatically. So in that regard, since those options are available, they're kind of tied in that regard. The only difference is that I feel that Star Citizen ships start up way too quickly. They're like flipping on a light switch and off you go. I feel that a standard startup should take 15, 20 seconds at least. And then, but you can do a fast one, like an emergency start, but it'll put wear and tear on your components. The reason is think of all those cinematic sequences. For example, Empire Strikes Back, right? Han's trying to start the Millennium Falcon on Hoth, and he's flipping switches. He's trying to get this thing turned on, and they have to pop the gun out, and they're trying to keep the stormtroopers back while they're shooting at the ship. That builds up tension. There's certain, if Chris Roberts is looking for a cinematic experience, this is one of them. And to simply just go, I'm in my ship, I press go, and I'm gone, to me is, you lose something. I think the bigger the ship, the more complex the ship, the longer that it should take to boot up and get going.
To warm all those systems up and do all its checks and make sure everything's not, broken.
Yeah, just say, imagine if you have an Idris and you just walk up into the cockpit and you go sit down and go power on, just fly off. Like, that's going to look really, you know what, breaking immersion? That's a huge one. It really is. It's like, just flip the switch and fly the Idris away. Now, taking off, I'm going to have to give this one to Star Citizen. Taking off and landing is very complex. I spent, not just spent, but am spending many of my days when I'm learning a new plane or whatnot, taking off and landing. They all handle things a little bit differently. I have exploded so many times in both directions.
Yeah, like your F-15 experience where the brakes were reversed.
Yeah, all that time I didn't know.
Yeah, what was it, day 28 or day 27 or something?
It was day 30.
Oh, was it? I thought it was like 1 or 2
I've been
days
taking
before.
it off on hard mode.
With the brakes on.
With the brakes on, but I thought they were off. Because I didn't have them inverted, because that one, it's the only plane that needed to have them inverted. Anyway, neither here nor there. The point is that taking off and landing can be extremely frustrating if it's extremely realistic. And I don't think a lot of the backers are going to want to have to deal with those mechanics. So I'm going to say that in the future, these processes are more automated. Basically, in the end, I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the end, but that's 2 points for Star Citizen right there. One for taking off, one for landing. Because we got cars today that can basically park by themselves. They get the cameras on there, and you just hit park, and they line up. So why wouldn't they have it 900 years from now where it does most of the work for you? I'm fine with that.
And SpaceX can launch rockets into, suborbital, and then have them turn around, brake, and then land pretty much on target. I don't think they've crashed a couple times, but this is brand new technology, and the stuff in Star Citizen is not brand new.
Exactly. All right, so we've taken off, and now we're in the air. So let's talk about the flight focus. Obviously, DCS is pitch and roll, and Star Citizen currently is more of a circle and strafe.
It's FPS controls is what it is.
Essentially, yes. Star Citizen is, I'd say, MAV-centric. DCS is main-centric. And this one, I'm going to have to give it to DCS without any doubt. Because even not taking atmospheric as a consideration, the fact that it takes the pilot's physiological nature, the way that the human form takes G-forces into account way better than Star Citizen does, which would lead naturally to pitch and roll. A lot of people want to argue that, lateral is much safer. No. Lateral doesn't cause you to black out maybe as quickly, and we got pilots in my Discord if you want to jump in there and debate this with them. Doing constant hard laterals, extended laterals, is extremely damaging to organs, spine. If you don't have your head supported, it'll break your neck. There are real problems with lateral that you just don't make that your focus on the human body. Now, if you were to take this particular DC, let's say once again, we covered this a little bit before, but you take an F-16 or F-18 Hornet, you get into space, it's got MAVs and all that. Only thing you're doing is you're subtracting the atmospheric and the gravitational, which means you can actually drift backwards and things like that. And in fact, I find it very interesting that as Star Citizen has now incorporated planets, I think a very easy way to resolve some of these issues is make them fly on the planets the way you want. And since apparently from what Pritchett had said in his paper, it will subtract out things you don't need. So if you bring it up into space, then what you do is you subtract the non-atmospheric or non-gravitational factors, and it should just fly the way it should fly.
And it'll perform better in space, technically.
Right, because you have more options, and you're not going to worry about stalling out and things like that. To me, it's like if they just focus on getting the atmospheric the way they want it, the rest will just fix itself, to a degree. Obviously, there'll be tweaks need to be made, but You get the idea.
That's everything, though.
Yeah. Okay, so next important thing is the information you get inside your vehicles as you're flying them. Indicators and MFDs. DCS just wins this. There's no comparison. Everything I need is easy to see, easy to find. Yeah, there's a lot more dials and switches on a real plane than on Star Citizens. Even if you threw that out, just look at the MFDs. Star Citizens where they would have like maybe 4 or 6 and you're all spread out in weird directions. DCS, a lot of the more modern planes has like 2 that are like in your face, and there's rows of buttons that you can change what those screens are displaying. You get everything you need in a much clearer to read format, and those 2 screens are not in the way. They're always visible. You know, if you took a lot of Star Citizens MFDs and you consolidated them to like a bigger screen that was much easier to read, and I have bad eyes, so any help on that would be great. And then on those screens have more options to switch between different pages, like a real-world fighter or aircraft. That would make a world of difference. So DCS definitely wins on all indicators and MFDs across the board.
I'm not even going to argue with this one or even make any counterpoints because there's no competition at all.
If he's not arguing, that says something. Now, information on your HUD. Basically, all the things you need to see, like, you know, your angle compared to the gravity plane, your altitude, your speed, all the important information that's literally right where you're looking without looking at the MFDs. DCS, once again, wins on this. I can see my speed if I'm accelerating, I can see what weapons are selected. I can see everything just very clearly. And it's all refined in such a way that all the important information is right there. Now, what Star Citizen needs, if they're going to be adding things like power and heat and things like that, that needs to be available for you right in your face somewhere, but without taking up too much space, but also very easy to read. So if your weapons are overheating or an engine's overheating or whatever, that needs to be made very clear to you, because right now you have to kind of go through those screens to find them, which is fine. You have those screens where you can switch things off to bigger versions, but there needs to be like shortcut small versions of things that are the most important that need to be there always.
Yeah, I think they're called idiot lights, and they're on modern cars. Back in the 60s and 70s, we had gauges for all these things. So you looked at the gauge and it's like, okay, well, it's running a little hot. Well, they realized that gauges were expensive, so they just put lights in things. So if your engine's running hot, you get a little light that comes on that says, hey, your engine's hot. So at the bare minimum, like on cheaper ships, at least have little lights warning you that, you know, something's running hot or, you know, something's missing.
Okay, so let's get into radar systems. I know, once again, this is going to be obvious, but DCS. Their radar systems are complex. Obviously, they're based on real world. They're deep. They're meaningful. And it's not that it needs to be deep and complex is why it wins. I feel that Star Citizen is wasting a gigantic amount of opportunity with certain types of ships that they have. Like, I feel that ships that have standard radar should have like maybe a 90 degree cone in front of them for general scanning, but outside of that cone, they don't show up. Ships like the Hornet Tracker or any sort of AWACS kind of ship would have a 360 degree scanning ability. So it's like, okay, why am I giving up my 2 guns on my Hornet Tracker? Well, because I want to be able to see what's around me at all times. So there should be an advantage to that. Not just increased range, but everything around you. And it's a kind of ship that would be much more difficult for a stealth ship to sneak up on. Then look at something like the Herald, right? The Herald is a ship that you can pick up transmissions and whatnot, and it's got these 4 arrays that are pointed forward. Now, obviously, that's going to be pretty powerful. It wouldn't be 360 like the Tracker. So in that case, since it's so focused, it may go in a, say, 90 degree arc way forward, even further than the 360 degree of the Tracker goes. But you have a differentiation. So you can start establishing different ways that radars work on different ships. And it's okay to have blind spots. Not always being able to see where your enemy is with a follow me arrow or having them always show up on the radar adds something to flight, because now people can lose one another and positioning starts becoming more important. If you're just going to be he's up to my upper right, look at the big red arrow, then you lose a lot.
Star Citizen kind of loses this one by default because I don't think they've developed enough into this. Hopefully we'll see more complex things. I'm not gonna lie, I'm okay with the arrow, but that's just because it's so hard to see everything. But if they tied that radar into, or the little arrow, if they tied the arrow into your radar, then you can be like, okay, well, you know, I have a 90 degree cone in front of me, and as long as he's in that cone, you have a radar lock. it'll have a little pip, some red outline or something that's on your HUD saying, hey, he's over here.
Yeah, which would also be another interesting advantage for something like the Hornet Tracker, because like someone's approaching from behind, so your arrow is going, whoa, back over here, buddy.
Yeah, instead of being a solid arrow, it's a box, and you go, uh-oh, that means it's behind you.
All right, this next category is missiles and chaff, kind of blending that together, because obviously you don't use chaff unless there's missiles coming at you. That's going to have to go to DCS as well, because every mechanic you deal with notching, why you fire missiles, what kind of missiles selected for what reason, everything there is as deep as you're going to find it in the real world. Star Citizen's missile play is kind of like, it's rudimentary. It's not much more advanced than an FPS's heat-seeking rocket. There's very little reasons to select one missile type over another missile tracking type. There really isn't. Yeah, there's going to be some differences, but nothing huge. I feel that there's a lot of wasted opportunity here. Missiles need to be longer range. They need to have a min-max range, like within 5 kilometers, or maybe like within 2 kilometers. You don't fire your missile, and then like size ones, and that goes 2 to 10 is like size ones and whatnot. Missiles
and we have talked about
yeah, we talked about this, and so it's just that missiles need to be maybe more expensive. They need to do more damage. They need to be deeper. There needs to be they're not well implemented in Star Citizen. I think any of you out there who actually fired one know that.
I think this is another win by default as well, because the missile play just isn't there yet.
Not at all. All right, so we're going to get into guns, how guns are handled in both games as well. Now, let's start with how DCS handles it. Now, obviously, we don't have IM, and we don't have ESP, yet you can kill things. The reason for this is that the way that modern planes handle bullets is that when they fire, it creates a cone. A lot of bullets get saturated in an area in a burst. And obviously, the closer that target is, more bullets are going to make contact, and the deadlier it is. But at a long distance, like, you may actually end up still shooting all around your target, but there is a kind of a, and then there's a cone of, you watch all your tracers basically heading towards that direction. Bullet drop and things like that. But that's how it handles it. You don't have to be like laser precise because of that. Star Citizen is very much laser precise, and then with the pacing issues causing all the issues with the netcode and the pip issues because of that, and the desync, it's a mess. They should be looking at saturation and like obviously lower pacing as well, but saturation is definitely a good way of doing it.
I mean, unless you want me to go into a 20-minute discussion about what gunnery evolved in from World War II all the way up to jets and stuff, and how they changed in their doctrines, I think we're pretty much done with this.
Yeah, and stop with the semi-auto or ship sniper rifles that are coming out in the future. When you're adding semi-auto and adding sniper rifles into your ship game, it's time for you to sit down and think.
Again, it's FPS mechanics in a flight game, which shouldn't be there in the first place.
All right, the next category is damage effects and how they interact with flight. Now, obviously, this one, I'm going to have to give it DCS again, because every system's mapped. You've got fuses even you can go down and smack if you need to start something or reset something or whatever, or shut something off in an emergency. Of course, obviously in DCS, it doesn't take much to kill you, because that's like real life. Once your plane gets to a certain amount of damage, it's just the best thing you can do is eject. You have to look at this a little bit as how Star Citizen going to blend the fighters and the large ships when it comes to defenses. So I think Lightning and I are in agreement. When we're looking at older games, we think a good system to use is something very similar to what the original X-Wing used for the shield systems. And maybe Lightning, you want to go into this a little bit?
This is just my opinion, and it's just kind of a rehashing of something we've already talked about. But if I was designing the defense systems and stuff, we're just going to cover shields for this, because armor is kind of a different story and a whole ball of wax. In mine, you'd have 3 different types of shields. And the reason for that is they're for different purposes, but they'd also have, like, you would want this in like a fighter, or you'd want this in a capital ship. And you'd be a high regen, but low hit points. Your kind of fighter or, middle of the road ship. Then you have like your standard one. It's in the middle, it's got decent regen, it's got decent hit points, but it's not as good as the other ones. It's not less focused. That'd be more like what you'd have on commercial ships, things that aren't really going to see combat, so they don't need all that specialized stuff. Then you'd have the super huge HP shields. These are more like capital ships or like bombers, things that are designed to take a hit. And they have the lowest regen and to balance this out, you could also factor in like the actual ship's power and the size or class of the shield. So you could have a high regen shield in a fighter, but it's not going to perform anything the same as like a high regen shield in like a Idris, where the Idris is going to have way more shield capacity, even though it's the same type of shield. It's more of them or a larger variant, though you probably wouldn't want that on a capital ship unless you were like really close to combat.
Another game that uses a similar system of this is Star Trek Online. They use regen.
Pretty much.
Yeah. They use a 3-tier system. Now, they also have a resilient one as well, but that's just modifications of existing themes. But yeah, the three types, you see a lot of this kind of set up across games where fighters are the high regen, low hit points, and that's they're supposed to be hit and fade, and it kind of goes on from there. It's pretty self-explanatory.
If you want to go into a little bit more detail before we move on, it would make it so that your shields are more like an oops if you change the way damage works and how combat works. So if you're in your fighter and you can take like 1 or 2 hits in your shields because its guns are less accurate but they do more damage or something, you go, oh crap, the shields are down. Well, your ship has armor, so it's probably not going to blow up instantly, but it gives you that little bit of buffer or reaction time so you can respond to something like if someone was behind you and you didn't know that they were there.
Yeah, exactly. The bottom line is, if you want to have more survivability with a flight focused flight model, you want to survive longer, with being chased or someone behind you, if we ever get gameplay like that at all, basically your survival depends on either outmaneuvering them and getting into an advantageous position, or keeping out of their sights long enough that a friend can come over and assist you. And in the meantime, the shields are that buffer to reduce any damage you take from those moments that maybe you cross over into his sights. We had next on our list landing. Obviously, we already covered that kind of preemptively, so you know where we're standing on there too. Star Citizen here, we want to keep it as simple as possible. You don't want to go through all that and then end up exploding in the last 50 feet. Obviously, it's a very difficult thing to do in the real world. It takes a lot of consideration, so we'll keep this one simple. I think that's best for everybody. That's probably would be the number one aggravation. Go Star Citizen.
I mean, there's VTOL in Star Citizen, so it kind of is self-explanatory.
Powering down, once again, powering down can be a one-button operation either way. The difference comes down to time. Ships set up powering down so quickly. I would like to see more ramp down on the ship, so I'm going to give a little bit of a lead on DCS on this. This isn't a huge deal. It's more of a immersion kind of deal. Yeah. Well, we'll get a full point, but it's not really a gigantic need. It's just like it would make more sense that like if engines and rotors and fans didn't just stop, like hard, they just wound down a bit. So adding up all the points, it kind of goes 9 points for DCS, 2 points for Star Citizen on the takeoffs and landings. So yeah, I guess you kind of have to say I want DCS in space, or maybe more appropriately say Evocron Legacy with G-forces.
There's a lot of things that Star Citizen wants to do. Most of them aren't in the game yet. It's hard to say, oh, well, do you want this? And it's like, I mean, they're not done. So all these things we're talking about, maybe they realize, oh, hey, you know what? We probably should have been doing that from the start. And they go and do that. And it's the game that they promised. It's the game that most of us backed for. Or they make it a first-person shooter with airplanes. I mean, spaceships.
They could make a first-person shooter with tacos. It wouldn't make it a good game.
I don't know. I mean, I like me some tacos. I might spend more money to get the taco ship.
The Idris Grande.
Ooh, yum.
But another good way to put it, if you don't know what Evocron Legacy is and you haven't seen it, though, you can probably find trailers, and I did cover it on my channel a little bit, showing off the systems like exploration, planetary landings. It's basically every system that you want in Star Citizen, or it's going to be in Star Citizen, is pretty much in Evocron, and it's programmed by one guy, even coupled and decoupled, fuel limits, everything. The only thing it's missing is G-forces, and it's brilliant, and it's like $29. The only reason I want Star Citizen more is because I want to be able to get out of my chair and walk into a base.
So you're actually playing as a person, not a ship.
Right, not a ship. I want to get out. That's the difference, because they both even have online. But I want to get out. I want to walk around. I want the full experience. But where flight goes, yeah. Another good way to represent, maybe a better way to look at flight, if you want to use one of Star Citizen's own piece of material, I would look at the Cutlass commercial, the original one, the Tango one. They weren't just two ships pointing at each other and spinning and firing. It was much more interesting than that. So using their own materials to point at something, I would point at that. I think that's one of their best trailers, honestly. What I want to talk about here as we close out the show is that I want to let everyone know this is going to be our flight capstone show. We're not going to be going specifically into mechanics maybe for a long time, because we've covered everything. I mean everything. There is nothing, I can't even sit and think of something that we need to break down that we haven't done over the past 2.5 years. We want to take our time and start exploring other avenues, other mechanics in Star Citizen, or other just have more fun playing other games and do videos with those. We're still obviously going to keep covering Star Citizen. This is always the Star Citizen show. But the thing is that it's really hard to take the slings and arrows constantly, because there's a large group of people that kind of worship at the leaderboards, which I think is a ridiculous thing, considering the fact it's a pre-alpha game or alpha game, however you want to term it. There shouldn't be these kind of things. We should just be testing the game to make sure that it works okay. There's this mindset that it's like us versus them. I own vehicles all the way from a Gray Cat to a Polaris. Every type and size value in between. And all I want to do is make sure that they blend together. Now, for me, I feel at this point in time, it's up to the community, people who watch this channel, the people who are not satisfied with the way things are, to start getting on the forums and start making your voice heard, because it has been a very long fight. I'm just guessing here, but I think we're coming up on, I think we're already into 5 years, moving towards 6 in this fight, try to get this course corrected. It's a lot of wear and tear. Lightning and I, we really want to talk about really positive things. We really do.
Yeah, well, it's kind of one way or the other, and it's really easy to harp on Star Citizen and be negative, because they haven't shown us that they can do anything right. I mean, we're watching this and we keep asking, do they know what they're doing when they're making this game?
Right, and if they would just tell us what their intent is. They have well, almost 3 years ago now, they said they would give us a document that said, you know, only was 2 years ago, something in that ballpark. They would lay it out for us what they were gonna do, and they never did.
Yeah, so it's too easy to be negative, and we're tired of being negative. We want to play games to have fun.
Damn straight.
So hopefully we're going to have some more lighthearted stuff coming out on the channel. And as far as Star Citizen news goes, that's still going to be here, obviously.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be more of like, hey, this is something really interesting and we want to talk about it.
Yeah, and we're going to like maybe a better version of what I did on Saturday. It was a first attempt, but I got some good feedback on it, and I think most of it was positive, actually, which is surprising to me. So I kind of want to do more things like that, and then have any sort of long-form shows on like this day as you're watching, or Tuesday if you're not. But even then, I doubt they're going to be as long as something like this for a while, unless some major change occurs. But I don't want to just be filler either. So it's going to be as long as it takes to cover whatever we're talking about. It could just be one thing. It's time to have some more fun with the show and the channel. I think it's time to try to make you guys laugh once in a while instead of bemoan things. You know, just have some fun.
Stop being so negative. Exactly. It's too easy to be negative, which is the problem.
That's why we don't want to do it. My hands are clean. Lightning's hands are clean. We have done everything we can with this flight situation. Now it's up to you. You know, join our Discord. We're not going to be
talking about it anymore.
Yeah, we don't want to. Join our Discord. You know, it's in the description below. You're absolutely welcome to join the conversation there. There's a bunch of people in there. There's pilots, there's military and civilian. There's sim enthusiasts. There's people who do programming for other games. There's people who do just all sorts of amazing high-tech jobs that have voiced their concerns that are there. If you're looking for like-minded individuals, or you have questions about these topics, great place to go. They're really great at answering them. Give it a shot. We won't bite your head off. Even Lightning. He'll be good.
Yeah, I'm always around, lurking, watching.
All right, guys. That's been everything for this week's BlastCast, and I'm washing my hands of this. Gonna move on to better, more fun things. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye, everybody.